That's actually one thing that I would love to go into a bit more because I think one of the hardest parts of this project was actually talking to families, since in most cases, you were the first people to give them any clue about what had happened to their loved ones, or even the fact that their loved ones were on this boat. That's really difficult news to break to anyone when you're the person doing it. And I know that you two spent a lot of time figuring out how to handle it and deciding that it was most important to be a human being first rather than a journalist.
Yeah, I
So
think
can you talk about that?
yeah, we were saying about other things, but this is probably the most challenging part of the entire project. And we debated a lot about this, how to approach.
Yeah, because we were in this odd situation, as you said, where we had more information to share with families because authorities and others who should have done this work had not done this work, they had no information from anyone about what
We're the only
happened.
ones with any information,
So
actually. Yeah.
we are bringing this really tragic news while also reporting on this story. And so we really wanted to separate both on the one side, approaching families, explaining to them what we knew, and then giving them time and space to process that information and seeing later if they're still willing to talk to us for the story. Because obviously, we're basically telling them that their children likely died on this boat.
Yeah. Because basically what was happening in Mauritania was we were meeting the families for the first time. And as Renata said, we're telling them, your
What happened?
Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit more. One thing you two have said is because of that, the first time you met the families, you didn't record anything and you didn't report anything, even if it meant missing that first reaction. Can you talk a little bit more? Why did you make that decision? Did you feel like you lost anything by making that decision? Talk a little bit more about that.
I think we just didn't feel comfortable to just arrive and immediately start recording and photographing and reporting before giving them a chance to process the information. And so that it didn't feel like we were also pressuring them to participate in our reporting because we had this news that was so important for them. Although heartbreaking, it is important news because families want to know what happened, even if it's the death of their loved ones. They'd rather know than not know. And so we did miss.
Yeah, I think what we have to understand is in many of those places, we're going to remote villages where there was no phone reception, sometimes no electricity, really very little resources. And we're meeting all these family members that usually were gathering around us for the first time. And we realized that it did not feel right to start recording that encounter as they were just at first curious and interested in understanding what we were going to tell them about their missing relatives. And then, record the moment that we're telling them. It's by all the evidence that we gathered, it's very likely that you're
the person. So what did you do? Did you tell them that you'd like to come back and talk about it tomorrow? Did you invite? Was that what you did? Okay.
We both discussed this a lot, and then we agreed that let's separate in two parts.
What you would do.
We're gonna meet everyone first, because there are various situations like I just described. We agreed that we're gonna meet them first. We're gonna tell them what we're doing, the information that we have, and then whoever agrees to participate,
you would interview.
Then we would go back.
Right, because remember, we're also initially we didn't have all the information, right? We have preliminary evidence that's pointing to
what might
the death, but we don't have a death certificate, we don't have a body, we don't have 100%
Yeah,
certain at
so
that point.
it
So we
was.
also have to be careful about how we deliver this
Yeah.
news.
In one case, which I thought was really interesting, in a sense, you missed the first reaction because of how you decided to do it, which was the mothers, right? The mothers crying and the mothers, and you couldn't get that, heartbreaking as it was, you couldn't get that on camera. And then when you guys wanted to go back, it was the men who talked to you and who wouldn't let the women talk to you. Can you talk about that? I mean,
Yeah, I think when we started, visiting and talking to the mothers at first, I imagined that there was a lot of pressure from the mothers on the fathers and the other men to, they were being sometimes fooled by smugglers and others who were trying to dismiss their concerns and say, no, your sons are not, have not been able to communicate because they're in prison. They're alive, but they're in prison, or they're alive, but they're, trying to deny that they were dead in this voyage. And so I think when in some cases we were asked not to talk to the women again, I think it was about the men trying to control the narrative, and also in some cases potentially trying to protect the mothers from, all the heartbreak that comes with the news. In other cases, we were welcomed back, and people wanted to talk to us and wanted to tell their stories.